All right, everyone, welcome back. Alex and Josh from the Stands MMA here, and we are going to be breaking down all of the action for this weekend's upcoming UFC 281 card. So we'll really briefly just touch on two or three fights on the prelims and early prelims, and then kind of get straight into the meat and potatoes, the main card, because that's why everyone's here. Look, I think there's a sleeper fight on the early prelims in Julio Arce versus Montel Jackson. I actually think that's going to be a really, really good fight. I think that has potential to be fight of the night, actually, written all over it. I just got a feeling. Just got a feeling that that one could be really, really good. Then, of course, you have Carolina Kolkiewicz against Silvana Juarez. But
I'm actually pretty interested in Ottoman Azaitar making his return after a
mm,
2 year layoff. He's the one that
he got
got done.
fired for the weird thing
Yeah,
in Dubai for like
Dubai. Yeah,
climbing between hotel rooms with a bag, wasn't he? Yeah,
also yeah, yeah.
that'll
No,
be
that's
interesting.
Matt Favola, a staple in the
Mm,
lightweight division as well.
yeah.
Man, there's some good fights on that prelim the ESPN prelims.
Yeah.
The
And then,
Riddell, Moicano, Reyes making his return, Molly McCann,
yeah, Reyes hasn't fought in a hot minute.
and a FTS MMA staple, Wellington Turman,
Mm.
come up against Andrei Petrosky. Man, it's some fucking really, really, really good fights. This is a
This is a
really
stat
good
card.
yeah, yeah.
And it's a fight fan friendly card in the sense of it's not just like Conor McGregor, Jorge Masvidal. Like it's not just the names; these are good fights.
Mm.
I'd say for the prelim card, Brad Riddell and Moicano should be fireworks for a round or two. I think Moicano gets it done. I think he's just a little bit too clean for Brad
Mm.
Riddell. Moicano's been on a sort of bit of a roll as well. But look, let's just get straight into the main card because that's why everyone's here. That's what everyone sees. So look, starting off at the beginning, Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Okay. Um, this will annoy all two of our Anzac fans that we have in the Southern Hemisphere. I think Claudio is probably going to get this done. I think Claudio's been on a roll. I think he's on a 5-fight win streak. I don't think Dan Hooker's at the stage where he can't beat anyone. I don't think that he's quite there yet. I do think his war with Dustin took a toll on his career of some kind that was irreversible. But I think momentum is the story going into this fight. Dan Hooker has all the skills. Claudio Puelles has an excellent ground game, having full submission wins by knee bar for God's sake in MMA. I think it's the momentum. I think Dan Hooker coming off those losses, Claudio coming off 5-fight win streak, and really just puts it all together so well. What do you think of this fight going into it? Because I know you're a bit of a Dan Hooker fan, and all the
I'm a
boys out of City Kickboxing.
I'm a Dan Hooker fan, but I think the experiment at one point, like if you dial it back and have a look at Dan's the road he's sort of been on and his losses that he's gone through. Like I heard Eugene talk about it on the MMA hour yesterday, which was Dan trained for Islam Makhachev in a garage in the US with no coaches, and then flew to fight the lightweight champion of the world with basically no camp, no coaches, guys that had never cornered a UFC fight.
It's on 2 weeks'
Before
notice or something as well,
two
wasn't
or
it?
3 weeks notice, comes up short against Islam Makhachev, which is no, I mean, who hasn't? You know what I
Mm.
mean? Except for the one guy that knocked him out. But he's really been on a tear, Islam. So I mean, okay, that's an audible. Yeah, I get that. Then he goes, okay, I want to drop down to 145 and I want to give that a crack. He also spoke to that and how moving to 145 was his own sort of stubbornness and going, no, coach, because coaches didn't want him to go down to 145. He goes, no, I want to do it. And he paid the price for it
Mm.
because maybe the weight cut was too much. The oxygen to the brain isn't as much as maybe as well. So I think Dan's just had a little bit of an unfortunate run. I'm not ready to give up on him just
Mm.
yet. I think, he's still young in a lightweight division. He's in the prime maybe of a lightweight division career. He's in his 30s, early 30s, 32. Not taking anything away from Claudio Puelles. But look, I think Dan has fought, the level of competition Dan has fought
Mm.
is the only thing that's sort of making it stand out for me on a winner, because I agree with your points. Like
Mm.
Claudio is on a roll, and there's every chance he could catch Dan Hooker and
Mm.
submit him somehow. But I'm not ready to give up on Dan. I think Dan, just with the experience and what's been said about this training camp and how Eugene wanted another level to be added. I think that is my deciding factor on this. And, the reach advantage has quite a significant reach advantage as well, which I think Dan's striking could play the difference in this. But yeah, that's my sort of take.
Just to add a little thought onto that, not necessarily so much who I think is going to win, but it's interesting watching these sort of semi-young talent like Darren Till, Dan Hooker, who aren't that old, but they've got so much road mileage on them that it almost ages them to a certain extent as a fighter. And of course, it's the wear and tear on the body. You're training combat sports, you're competing, but it's just really interesting kind of looking at that and maybe thinking about how fighters should structure their career. But look, we'll move on. Then we'll go to the next fight on the main card. So we have Frankie Edgar in his retirement fight against Chris Gutierrez. Look, man, Frankie's 41, 42 at this point, 41, 42, fighting at lightweight. So it's not fighting at heavyweight at 40. It's very different. Actually, this fight is it's at bantamweight, this fight. My apologies. So it's even the speed differential there with, how much speed he's lost at his age is even bigger there. And, I think Frankie had a really good skill set at the right time when he was sort of in his prime of the sport. So after the BJ Penn fights, during the Gray Maynard fights, Frankie had a really unique skill set. That he had really good boxing. He was quick, he had excellent wrestling, but the game's just evolved so much. And, Frankie went from never being finished in his entire career to being finished a couple of times now in the past few years, which again, natural age. I want Frankie Edgar to win this fight more than anything and go out on top. Unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to happen because the one opponent in MMA that's undefeated is Father Time, unless your name is Yoel Romero, and then you'll fight until your 50s because you were born in a lab somewhere. But I just, I think the game has kind of evolved to a point that at Frankie's age, it's a little bit too hard to catch up. And again, all respect to Frankie. He's someone that I grew up with watching in the sport. I remember when he beat BJ Penn, but I am going to go with Chris Gutierrez on this one. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's a submission or I'm leaning more towards a TKO, but I think Chris Gutierrez gets him out of there.
I think I agree. I share the exact same opinion. I think Chris has been on a roll too. I mean, his only loss was his first loss in the UFC. And, he's had a draw since then, but he's practically on a 6-fight win streak. If you count the draw as well, 7. So, I love Frankie and I share the exact same thought. Frankie was a guy I grew up watching as well. When he won the lightweight title years ago, and I think the road mileage he's endured over the years is pretty significant, especially considering the knockout from Chito Vera.
Ortega,
getting those finishes late in your career, I don't think puts you in a great position against a guy like Chris. And I would have liked the UFC to give Frankie a more fan friendly retirement fight, but it's the UFC, and every fight's a tough fight. So unfortunately, I agree with you. I think that's not taking anything away from Chris Gutierrez. I do like Chris. I just am a fan of Frankie from a personal standpoint, but I agree with that sentiment. I think Frankie, unfortunately, I think he gets finished.
Yeah, no, for sure. So we'll move on then to probably. Look, I know there's a women's strawweight title fight above this. I'd probably say this is the second biggest fight on the card, in all honesty, even though it's third from the top. I think this is the second biggest fight in terms of hype, excitement, interest in the fight. Michael Chandler versus Dustin Poirier. Now, we actually managed to get an article out on this, kind of giving our thoughts on it. So that's on our website, ftsmma.com. You guys should really check that out, as Josh did a really good job working on that. But if you want sort of an extended version of, I guess, just my thoughts on that, that'd be there. But to kind of bring everything down to to kind of narrow everything down to what I think. And look, I will be honest, I am a Michael Chandler fan. I will be completely honest, but I will try to be as impartial as possible.
I appreciate the transparency.
Yep. There you go. I'll try and be as impartial as possible, even though I want Michael Chandler to win the heavyweight belt and fight everyone. But I have been going back and forth on this fight for a long time. I've spoken to you about this, that I think Dustin is probably the worst matchup stylistically for Chandler in the division. I think Dustin's pressure and pace, particularly when he starts getting into a rhythm and he starts flowing with his boxing, Dustin's lead hook as well kind of concerns me for Chandler in this fight. I think they're wrestling. I would say Chandler's the better wrestler. I don't think it's going to come into play unless Chandler uses a blast double leg to kind of reset. What kind of makes me, what sort of gives me the opinion that I think Chandler's going to win this is one thing and one thing only. I shouldn't say one thing only, but one major thing. Dustin can be a really slow starter. We've seen it in the Dan Hooker fight. We saw it in the Michael Johnson fight. We've seen it in even the Conor McGregor fights. Dustin starts quite slowly. I think starting that slowly against a dude that is so explosive and powerful, it could be very detrimental to him in the fight. I think that I do see Chandler getting an early knockout in this fight. I think if he is going to win, it's going to be in the first 2 rounds. It's going to be a knockout. But I would not be surprised to see Dustin weather an early storm and then kind of put on a bit of a boxing clinic, to be honest, over the next 2 rounds and piece him up a little bit. Mm-hmm. I am ultimately going to go with Chandler just based off, I feel like after the McGregor fights, even Dustin was kind of talking about, I don't really know if I want to do this anymore, kind of stuff. And I feel like Chandler's more hungry at the moment. And again, just that Dustin can be a bit of a slow starter. So I am leaning towards Chandler, but this is like a 51-49% fight in my opinion.
It's a tough fight to call. And I would like to know what kind of Chandler we get too, because, I mean, the Chandler that fought Tony, I thought Tony won the first round. 100%. And that's a Tony that just got submitted by Nate Diaz. Mm-hmm. But then you look at the Chandler that comes out against Oliveira. He wins that first round against Oliveira for the majority of it. He, was doing pretty well against Justin Gaethje. Obviously, Gaethje was touching him as well. And you're right, Justin is a slow starter and has always been a slow starter. And, look at the Conor McGregor fight last year. More so the second fight. But it's by the main event. This could possibly be the second most anticipated fight I've looked forward to all year, because Michael Chandler is one of the most exciting fighters in the UFC. And I'm a fan of Dustin. To be honest, I'm a fan of both of those guys.
Likewise, yeah.
And I kind of don't want to see either of them lose, because a loss doesn't hurt Dustin Poirier's, his abilities, marketability. Not really. There's still money. There's still fights there for him. If Chandler was to lose, I don't think he maybe gets that belt opportunity that he's looking for. However, if Chandler wins, I definitely think it puts him in great contention for a title shot. Considering there's a new champion, whatever happens with Volkanovski and Islam in the future, it all depends on that. But
so I have an interesting question then for you. Sorry to sort of interrupt, because I know you're a Volk fan. Do you think if Chandler gets a sensational knockout over Dustin, that he leapfrogs Alex Volkanovski? Because I actually do. I think they do that.
I think maybe, but I would say yes if they hadn't done the setup in Dubai. Now, I know that's not always concrete because Brock Lesnar was meant to fight.
That was just on my mind, yeah.
So that's not always concrete, but I feel like that's the fight to make. I feel like the UFC would be. Islam wants it, Volk wants it. I can't see it not happening, but in an alternate universe, yeah, definitely. Ultimately, my heart wants Michael Chandler to win. My head says Dustin Poirier, only because of Poirier's boxing and the rhythm. That's what worries me, is that he does get into a rhythm.
Yep.
Justin Gaethje was able to get in that rhythm, and Michael Chandler that fought Justin Gaethje was just war Chandler. That dude wanted war. So it depends what Chandler we get. Ultimately, though, I'm going Dustin Poirier.
Yep. No, okay, for sure. Well, look, we're going to at least, we can go into depth on the co-main if you want. Briefly going to cover it. My pick is going to surprise people. I actually think Carla Esparza gets this done. It's a weird feeling I just have a feeling she's going to edge out some sort of decision that is not very entertaining. But Carla Esparza, look, putting her last fight aside, and let's, that was a whatever. Putting the Rose Namajunas fight aside, Esparza is a freakishly good wrestler. I don't think she is pretty intelligent within the octagon as well. I don't think she's going to want to stand up with Zhang Weili. I think that's a really bad move. I am going to say that I do think Carla Esparza gets this done. I think it's by decision. I do not think it's a very exciting fight, just based off my thoughts. But again, I kind of view this 51-49% kind of way because I could see Zhang Weili just flash knocking her out like she did to Joanna. But I, just got a feeling I will give it to Carla Esparza. I don't think it's going to be a great fight. I just don't.
What I will say, this year has been the year of upsets for women's MMA. Rose lost her title to Carla. That was maybe an upset, but they've all lost their belts. Amanda, okay, it was December, but lost her belt to Juliana Pena. Then you had Valentina Shevchenko nearly lose her belt to Talia Santos.
And then Joanna getting flatlined. I don't think anyone thought
Joanna getting flatlined. So yeah, there's been some crazy women's fights this year in terms of where the division sits. Look, I can definitely see a world, and I was literally thinking about this afternoon because I put a multi on and I was looking at the odds. And like obviously Zhang Weili's the favorite, but I thought, wow, like what about in some crazy land where Carla actually wins? Because I don't think there's any one person that's betting on Carla at the moment. I think everyone's hedging their bets on Zhang Weili. And I understand that aspect too because of how freakishly good Zhang Weili is. I mean, she just put to sleep a former, goat in Joanna Jędrzejczyk. So look, I'm gonna stick with the narrative. I think Zhang Weili gets it done, and I think it could be similar to how she won the title back in China in 2019 against
Jessica
Andrade, where she just came out, barraged her, kind of got her on her back foot instantly, and shocked her almost, and just beat the shit out of her. That to me is the path to victory because I think Zhang is a dangerous striker, and ultimately the fight starts standing up. So that's where I'm heading.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say with that is that, and again, I can see Zhang Weili landing knocking her out. I can absolutely see that happening. As I said, I view this like 50-50, if not 51-49. I don't know if Zhang's just going to staunch her, like in terms of like storm forward on her quickly because of the wrestling.
She might not staunch. Yeah, I don't know if she'll staunch forward. I'm just saying, I think it'll be I just feel like the Carla that beat Rose was, I mean, that was like a play it safe Carla. I don't think you can play it safe against Zhang Weili. I think she'll take your head off. But anywho, now we talk about the trilogy. Alex Pereira looking to make it a three-peat against Israel Adesanya. Look, I'll start this off because if there's a fight that I've been more interested in and more excited for, this is it. I have the whole year out of every UFC card we've had some amazing fights. This is the ultimate one because this is like, in my opinion, this is Israel Adesanya's final boss of the video game. This is the guy that he gets to in the last mission and has to defeat. And look, I heard this yesterday and it couldn't be more true. If Alex Pereira didn't beat Israel Adesanya twice and was just some guy coming to the UFC and was 6 wins, 1 loss, he would not be getting this title shot. It's completely insane that he's getting this. But it obviously makes sense because there's a storyline, there's backing, everything. I 100% understand all that. This is one of the most exciting matchups I can remember in recent memory because for once we have a possibility of Israel Adesanya losing. Did I think he was going to lose to Jared Kennedy? No. Did I think Robert Whittaker could be? Yeah, could. But ultimately, I saw him doing what he does best: sticking on the outside, lots of leg kicks, keeping his range, distance, all that.
I think the last time we both thought someone was going to beat Adesanya, I think we both picked Costa.
Correct. I literally was about to say that. The last time we picked someone was Costa, and that's the last real challenge we've seen from Israel Adesanya is a guy like Paulo Costa, a guy he's going to come and knock you out. And before that, it was, and I was on that same train of thought. I thought, far out, man, Costa is a wrecking ball. If he catches Izzy's been asleep. He can catch him and put him out. Izzy said, "Yeah, okay, cool, thanks," and just shit all over Paulo Costa. Wasn't even close. And I have a feeling, speaking, with Mike and that sort of stuff, Mike Ango, former striking coach at City Kickboxing, he's, when Izzy's back is against the wall and there's pressure on him, I feel like that's when he shines the best. And I feel like, now take this with what you will, I think that similar to a John Jones, when John Jones was getting guys like, Anthony Smith, these fights that weren't really getting him up, he was just doing what he had to do to get the win, right? Now count, PEDs and all that sort of stuff out, but you bring him up for a more exciting fight. I feel like he gets up for it, and I feel like this could be the moment where Izzy rises to the occasion. I've heard what Eugene said about this camp, and what this camp was like about pushing him to an extra gear that he hadn't seen before, and that Eugene was like, treating them like, you guys are shit, like you guys are literally shit. What, you're not performing, all that stuff, and it forced everyone at City Kickboxing to really up their game. So, to cut this a bit short, and I don't want to take it too long, but I think Izzy will rise to the occasion. Nothing away from Pereira. I just think Izzy, this is his chance to prove it, and I think he knows it. I think he's going to be careful and cautious. He knows that the power's there, but I feel like this is his game. Ultimately, I'm going to go Israel Adesanya, and my next little prediction is I think he's cleaned the division out. It's very clear. There's no one left, in my opinion. What makes sense for me, and I put this in our Discord the other day, you can join that. The link is in our Instagram bio. Is stylistically, Yuri Prochazka is a better matchup for Izzy than Jan was for Izzy. Obviously, Jan is a lot bigger.
Even Glover.
A lot stronger. Izzy could potentially make a better case for another light heavyweight title shot. Could he win this? I'll leave it there because I don't want to keep going for too long, but I do think Israel Adesanya does get it done.
I agree. I went back and forth on this fight for real. I still am back and forth on it a little bit, to be honest. I don't really have a clear decision, but my thoughts at the moment, look, I agree. I think Izzy gets it done. I think primarily for a few reasons. I think the range in MMA and kickboxing is very, very different. We have seen Alex Pereira struggle with the range in MMA a few times against Bruno Silva, and against I can't remember the name of the fighter that he took his first L to in MMA. So there's that as well. I think the other element as well is it kind of everything in MMA is different. Like the octagon changes the angles that you can use as opposed to a kickboxing ring. The sort of strikes you can use when you do have to be concerned about takedowns and, things like that. And look, I don't think we're going to see a lot of wrestling in this fight. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some clinching against the cage, some things like that. I don't think we're going to see a wrestling fight. I think this is going to be a very one-for-one striking fight, if I'm honest. I think it's going to be Izzy strikes, Pereira strikes, Izzy strikes, Pereira strikes. I kind of almost see this, to be honest, to a degree, almost like a point sparring match, but obviously much more technical, much more kind of brutal. I do think Izzy gets it done. I think it's going to be by split decision. I think it's going to be a very technical fight, but in terms of like the war that he had with Kelvin Gastelum, things along those lines, I don't really envision that happening. But I do agree that I think Izzy gets it done. I think the experience in MMA as well is so valuable. Just being in the cage, just understanding the sport, understanding the range. So I will say that I have watched those first two fights as well, and yes, Izzy was in control of most of them, but again, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. He lost. That's the reality. But there are things you can watch, and he was in control of that fight. And I think in MMA, when he has knowledge of how to use the octagon, knowledge of the different angles that it sort of changes when you're in a cage as opposed to a ring, I can see Izzy utilizing that in order to control the fight. I just think it's going to be a very 1-4 striking fight. But I do agree. I think Israel gets it done. So that is our predictions, guys, from top to bottom, basically, of what we think of this UFC 281 card. So as I said, guys, our website is live. It was designed by our very own Josh. So well done, Josh. And that is live now, guys, ftsmma.com. We just dropped Josh's first in-person interview with Benny Mahoney, fighting this weekend on Infliction 31. And we'll also have some interviews dropping this weekend, and we'll most likely give our reaction to the pay-per-view. So thank you to everyone who's tuned in so far. The support's been massive. It means a lot to Josh and I, and we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace.